astronomical. We're taking in tremendous amounts of money with the tariffs. We were treated very unfairly on trade, and countries are having a hard time getting used to the fact that they can't do that to us anymore.
What makes politics dangerous? Not loud statements, not rallies, not slogans, not televised debates. The real threat hides in silence. Silence is not peace. It is a sign. It is either capitulation or the threat of a new strike. That is exactly what happened at the end of March 2025, when Donald Trump, who had launched more than 30 public attacks on Canada in just 2 months, suddenly fell silent. Not a single tweet, not a single biting phrase, not even a hint of rhetoric. And this came after threats of 20% tariffs, insults directed at Carney and Poilievre, and daily pressure on the northern neighbor. What happened? Why did America's loudest politician suddenly lower his tone? The answer is frightening in its simplicity and scale. Canada, seen by many as a passive figure on Trump's chessboard, pulled out a hidden card. A financial warning capable of collapsing $1.2 trillion in American credit. And Trump backed down. This was not just a diplomatic moment. It was a test of the entire financial architecture of North America. From January 23rd to March 28th, 2025, Trump mentioned Canada 31 times on the social network Truth Social. 25 of those posts were openly insulting. He called Prime Minister Mark Carney a globalist banker, compared Pierre Poilievre to a Trudeau stand-in, and threatened tariffs on grain and electric vehicles. It seemed the pressure would only escalate. But on April 1st, everything stopped. Even in Milwaukee, where journalists twice asked about the situation with Canada, Trump did not utter a single word. Why? Because behind the scenes, another performance had begun, a financial one. According to Bloomberg Analytics dated April 3rd, the sharp drop in Canadian bond yields, by 12 basis points in 72 hours, coincided with a diplomatic phone call from the White House Situation Room to Ottawa. This was no formality. It was a warning. But from whom and about what? According to a Bloomberg leak, the conversation was tense. Trump accused Carney of creating anti-American trade barriers through G7 mechanisms. In response, Carney stated that further pressure could destroy the fiscal integrity of North America. And this is where things get most interesting. The very next day, the planned G7 statement on currency stability was suddenly canceled. According to the Financial Times, the reason was deep disagreements between the U.S. and other participants. Does this mean Canada had already begun coordinating with Japan and the European Union on an economic counteroffensive? Perhaps yes. From March 26 to March 29th, a closed summit of finance ministers from Canada, Japan, and the European Union was held in Geneva. Officially, monetary coordination. In reality, the development of a plan to reduce dependence on U.S. Treasury bonds in the event of escalating economic aggression from Washington. This is not a threat. This is an ultimatum. Japan holds more than $1.1 trillion of U.S. debt. The European Union, around $900 billion. Even Canada, with a smaller but strategically important $148 billion, plays the role of a link between Western markets and the capital of BRICS and the Persian Gulf. And here is the result. The yield on 10-year U.S. bonds drops sharply. Central banks increase currency swaps. Trump retreats, for the first time since the beginning of the new election cycle. But was this a mistake by Trump or a pre-calculated move by Carney? Publicly, Carney remained in the shadows. But within Canada, his position strengthened. Between March 12th and March 27th, his approval rating rose from 38% to 45% among undecided voters, especially in Ontario and Quebec. Against the backdrop of American insults, the boomerang effect worked in Canada. National pride led to rallying around the leader. Meanwhile, Pierre Poilievre, despite ideological similarities with Trump, began to lose support, especially among female entrepreneurs and moderate voters. Panic began to spread within the Conservative Party of Canada. According to Axios, several members of Parliament even informally asked Trump's team to tone it down in order not to destroy Poilievre's domestic support. And Trump went silent. But silence is not forgiveness. Politico reports that as of March 31st, his campaign headquarters received clear instructions: no public statements about Canada. Analysts called it a strategic pause, but some experts, including former market official John Ulott, believe this is not about strategy, but rather an economic ultimatum from the G7. This version is also supported by the sharp drop in yields after March 30th. Barclays analysts directly stated, this is the result of reduced geopolitical risk in U.S.-Canadian trade. So was this a step forward or a step back? According to an internal report by TD Securities, even a 10% reallocation of Canadian pension assets toward Eurobonds would trigger a psychological effect and deal a blow to the dollar. And then, on April 2nd, the Canadian pension fund CPPIB transfers $1.4 billion into German bonds. This is the largest asset reallocation since the year 2020. And all of this is happening against the backdrop of rising inflation in the United States and the fifth consecutive quarter of declining foreign ownership of American debt. Canada did not just silence Trump. It reminded the world that allies are not puppets. They are a force capable of shaking even the dollar. And here's what is particularly intriguing. While Trump remained silent in the public space, behind the scenes, he was already preparing a counterstrike. According to a ProPublica investigation, a super PAC linked to Trump's campaign has already invested $3,200,000 in online advertising, targeting these Canadians aged 30 to 50. The theme, criticism of Carney as a globalist and reminders of his British past. But Carney is only strengthening his position. At a rally in Winnipeg, he said, "We don't shout, we act." And that phrase went viral on Canadian social media. Now, let's ask the main question. What happens if Carney wins? If he continues pursuing financial coordination within the G7 and reducing dependence on the United States, the next crisis will strike not at rhetoric, but at the capital markets. According to Pew Research, 67% of Canadians consider Trump a threat to the global economy, an increase of 15 percentage points since the year 2020. In the U.S. border states, support for aggressive trade with Canada has dropped by 21%. Goldman Sachs has already revised its North American GDP forecast downward by 0.4%. This is not just a pause. This is the calm before the storm. Because the next battle may erupt not over tariffs, not over grain, and not over tweets, but over bonds, over supply chains, over the very structure of influence in North America. And if Canada managed to silence the loudest politician in America, what might it achieve next? Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Canada is truly shifting from the status of an ally to that of a global player? Or is the real turning point still ahead?